All right. Zach, I know you want to make a record regarding the plea before we go to sentencing, but anything we need to talk about before I call the case?
No, Judge.
All right. All right, let's be on the record. Case number 2020CR852, captioned State of Kansas versus Daton, Doyle, Petrey. Would the parties announce their appearances, please?
May it please the court, the state appears by Assistant District Attorney Claire Thibodeau.
May it please the court, Daton Petrey appears in person in custody and by counsel Zach Anthony, all via Zoom platform.
Okay, we are set down today for a sentencing hearing. However, I would note we've continued this a number of times, as it was my understanding that Mr. Petrey was moving to withdraw his plea. We had a hearing set, Mr. Petrey didn't appear, and then he was picked up, and we reset this today for either a sentencing or a motion to withdraw a plea or both. And Mr. Anthony, I believe you had something you wanted to put on the record regarding that.
Yes, Judge. So prior to today's hearing, I met with Mr. Petrey in the jail and reviewed his options and the merits I'm not sure what the right way to put this is, but the merits of the potential of withdrawing his plea versus the cost of doing so. And it's my understanding at this time that Mr. Petrey does not wish to withdraw his plea and does wish to go forward with sentencing. Now, he understands that in doing so, if he were to later change his mind, it does become harder to withdraw his plea. And that he expects that the court will follow the plea agreement, place him on probation, at which point he'd be expected to start probation. So he understands all of that, Judge. I do believe that it is in his best interest to go forward here today, and I believe that's what he intends to do.
All right, Mr. Petrey, you heard what your lawyer had to say. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right, I want to make sure this is the case. Since Mr. Anthony is the one who worked out the plea for you and all of that, I just want to make sure that we get on the record today. If you feel like Mr. Anthony talked you out of withdrawing your plea or forced you or pressured you not to go forward with a motion to withdraw your plea, I need to know that today. Are you telling me that that's not the case?
No, sir, I agree to everything we talked about.
Okay, all right. And you understand that while it's not impossible to withdraw a plea after sentencing, the standard becomes much harder for a court to grant such a motion after sentencing's occurred. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, and you still wish to forego a motion to withdraw the plea and go forward with sentencing today?
Yes, sir, I want to get sentenced and I want to keep the plea to get
All right.
sentenced with what we talked about, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Petrey. All right. So when we did that plea, I ordered a pre-sentence investigation, set it over for sentencing pending that report. I've received that report. The critical findings are as follows: that the sole count of conviction is one of aggravated battery. That's a severity level 7-person felony. The defendant's criminal history score was found to be that of C, as in Charles. That would leave him with a presumption of probation and a presumed underlying range of 25, 27, or 29 months. If he has to do that time, he'll be eligible for up to 20% good time credit and subject to 12 months of post-release supervision. The special rule that applies in this case is that this crime was committed while on parole. That's number 9. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the operation of that special rule would change it from presumptive probation to no presumption. Am I correct in that, Ms. Ariola?
Yes, you are. You are.
Right.
You are correct. But this new PSI does not have that
Box that you can mark.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. All right. So if he's granted probation today, it would be for a period of 24 months to community corrections. I would ask you first, Ms. Thibodeau, did you have an opportunity to review the PSI? Do you have any additions, corrections, or challenges?
Your Honor, I have reviewed the PSI. The only changes are obviously the sentencing date changed, and he does have a bit more jail credit.
Right.
He's been in since June 2nd of this month.
Okay. All right. Yeah. The sentencing date obviously reflects the one that we had intended on. So that will need to be changed, and we will calculate the jail time credit with the additional days that Mr. Petrey has served here. All right. Mr. Anthony, same questions to you. Have you reviewed? Do you have any additions, corrections, or challenges?
No, Judge, we reviewed the PSI. When I met with him, we have no challenges to the criminal history score or to the convictions that give rise to that score.
All right. Hearing no challenges to the PSI, I will adopt the findings with those that correction suggested by the state as the sentencing date. All right. With that, I would hear your comments as to sentencing, Ms. Thibodeau.
Your Honor, I would ask you to follow the plea agreement, which in this case was the aggravated number and probation. I would also ask for you to order no contact with the victim, John Curtis Jr. I would also ask that you run this case consecutive to that Nebraska case that he was on parole for. There is no restitution in this case.
All right. Mr. Anthony, just so the record's clear, I guess I didn't realize or catch that the case that Mr. Petrey is on parole for is a non-Kansas case. So I think there's a couple of things that while it does, I still think destroy his presumption of probation, it is not mandatorily consecutive as it would be if it was a Kansas sentence. I'll ask again, Ms. Areola, I have that correct, is that right?
Let me just look really fast, but I believe it is correct.
All right.
Judge,
Well,
I believe Mr. Petrey is trying to tell you something about that case. I think he's going to tell you that he's off parole on it, but go ahead.
okay. All right. They wrap up your parole, Mr. Petrey?
Yes, sir. All that is Nebraska irrelevant.
All right.
With sir.
So that kind of removes that as an issue. I think I could, again, with it being out of state, I could run it consecutive or concurrent, and that would be my discretionary, not a mandatory decision. And secondly, if there is nothing left there, then it really doesn't affect one way or another. All right.
Judge, that is correct. It is a Nebraska case.
All right.
And he may have been on parole at the time. I mean, obviously he was on parole at the time of this offense. But
Sure. Yeah. All right. All right. Then, Mr. Anthony, I would ask for your comments as to sentencing.
Judge, this is a little bit complicated, but Mr. Petrey failed to appear because he was residing in Clinton, Missouri, and didn't have an opportunity, didn't have any transportation mechanism at all to get back here. When I met with him, I challenged him to say, if he's going to be granted probation, he's going to have to understand that he has to remain in compliance with probation. So he cannot simply say that he doesn't have a right and not show up to probation for a year and a half. And in my challenging him with that, he told me that he had met with some people in the Oxford House community, that he had had an opportunity to get into an Oxford House, that he had had an opportunity to get some help, some treatment help. All of this he had done on his own without me setting it up for him or without anybody ordering him to do it. So I think he is prepared. I think he understands the mistakes he's made. And I think he's prepared to take responsibility for his probation here today, and would hope that the court would follow the plea agreement.
All right. Mr. Petrey, now is your opportunity to tell me anything you want me to know in mitigation of your sentence today.
Your Honor, the only thing I wanted to comment on is there's a couple times during the hearing the Nebraska has been brought up. I jammed that number. I jammed it July 13th last year, and I walked out with no parole, no probation, no post-release. I was sentenced under the old law where basically you can finish your sentence. Once you got done, it's over with. July 13th last year, I finished 100%, totally completed my sentence. And as as was referred to as jam. I jammed my sentence and it was done. So they were saying that I had this basically caught this charge while on parole,
Right.
and that's not facts, sir. I was a free man and made a mistake as a free man.
All right. All right. Well, look, here's where I'm kind of on that. I suppose that if I found that you were in fact, on parole, then I would be within the legal parameters to deny probation. That's not my plan anyway. So I'm not worried about that. The other thing is whether I would run this case concurrently or consecutively with that. And it seems like whether or not you were on parole at the time of the incident or not, nobody doubts that you're off parole and finished with that anyway. So there's nothing to run it consecutively to. So I don't see that this is going to impact in any way what you get here today. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Ms. Kebido, I did read the victim impact statement. Your victim was notified of today's hearing.
I believe so, Your Honor.
All right. And there was no request for restitution?
Correct. I did check with him and he let me know that his insurance covered some and his disability covered the rest. So he had no medical expenses.
All right. All right. Mr. Anthony, know any legal reason why I should not now proceed to sentencing?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Well, I think it was a well negotiated plea, and I think it's a just outcome in this case. So I'm going to follow the plea agreement and sentence Mr. Petrey to 29 months in the Department of Corrections. If he has to do that time, he'd be eligible for up to 20% good time credit and subject to 12 months of post-release supervision. His application for probation today is considered and it is granted to community corrections for a period of 24 months. Mr. Petrey, I'm glad, look, I'm very familiar with the Oxford House. They do an amazing job in helping people get back on their feet. And not only that, but really kind of giving them responsibility and accountability for their actions. So if you can get into an Oxford House, I'd encourage you to expend every effort to do so. I think it'll be very helpful. If for some reason you find yourself unable to stay here in the Kansas City area, here's what you need to do. You need to arrange with your probation officer and continue to meet their requirements, but also request that they request courtesy supervision in whatever community you will be living at. And they can do that. And it's usually, although it's not guaranteed or a right, it's usually something they're very willing to do and very able to do. So get yourself in that Oxford House. That would be the best case scenario here in town, and work that. They not only will help you meet, get yourself on your feet, but they're really a help in meeting all the requirements of probation. If that's not the case, I can't urge this enough. If you have to leave town, here's what you need to do. You need to stay here and work it out with your probation officer until he or she gives you permission to go and can get you set up with services in that town. Okay?
Yes, sir. Communicate. I understand, sir.
Yeah, that's the key to it. All right. Now I have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Petrey. What's your plan as far as making ends meet, getting an income and stuff like that?
Job applications. I plan on this. I got a phone. As soon as I get my phone back, I've never had a problem with gaining employment, sir. The only problem that I've ever had was transportation.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, the Oxford House, they support you getting gainful employment once you've earned your way to that point.
Right.
And so I'm just, like I said, I plan on getting out. I have to go to Olathe. And that's the only thing is I have to go to Olathe for, there's some city hold or something like that for a ticket or something I haven't paid. So I have to go attend to that. But that's last time they came and got me from after I got sentenced here. I ended up going there for 8 days. They gave me a fine, paid the fine, moved on with life. and was working with this. So plan with this basically is that once I go to Olathe, attend to my business there, and as soon as I get an opportunity to get out and get to the Wyandotte County probation office, report and head to the public library and get some internet and immediately start searching for a job.
Great. All right. Well, that sounds like a really good plan, Mr. Petrey, and I'm sure you're going to be successful at it. All right. So here's what I'm going to do with costs and fees. I'm going to assess the court costs and the supervision fee. I'm going to waive Mr. Anthony's fee, but impose the bids application fee. And the reason I'm doing that is this is Mr. Petrey's first Kansas felony conviction, so he's going to have to pay that KBI database fee. There is no restitution required. Mr. Petrey, if I ordered you to pay $50 a month and made that start when you are given permission by Oxford House, if that's where you end up to seek employment, do you believe that that's an obligation that you could meet?
I can meet that with no problem, sir.
All right. And so I'll order that a minimum of $50 a month starting when Mr. Petrey becomes eligible for employment, which we understand that if he goes to the Oxford House, there's a period of time where they require kind of some more strict supervision before they allow their residents to seek employment. All right. So I think that covers costs and fees. I've talked about the probation term. Mr. Petrey, there's a couple of advisements I need to give you. You have 14 days from today to appeal anything you don't like about your sentence. You may also be able to seek expungement of this conviction after a period of time following successful completion of probation. As a convicted felon, it is prohibited for you to own or possess a firearm and certain kind of deadly cutting instruments like daggers, dirks, switchblades, stilettos, basically anything that could be considered a deadly weapon as far as a knife goes. Do you understand all that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Jail time credit will be calculated by the parties and granted to the defendant as well. Other things that I failed to cover today, Ms. Thibodeau?
Judge, I would ask you to order him to have no contact with the victim, John Curtis Jr.
All right. That's not a problem, is it, Mr. Petrey?
Not at all, sir.
All right. I'll order no contact with the victim as part of the probation order. All right. Mr. Anthony, anything else I failed to cover today?
Nothing from me, Judge.
All right. Then we're going to be adjourned. Mr. Petrey, good luck to you. Let me stop the live stream here and I will
Judge,
talk. Yes.
sorry, can I interrupt?
Yes.
What about the anger management that was, I believe it was discussed during the,
I think that's in the probation contract. Let me make
Yeah.
sure of that.
I'm looking for the plea, but
It wasn't in the plea petition,
Okay.
but it is marked in the order of probation that I'm getting ready to sign. It says other anger management and it's marked.
okay,
And that's something the Oxford House will be able to help with.
okay.
All right.
Great.
We
Thank you.
are adjourned.